going?
Well, I'll just get the map 61. Well, we're here, okay? And we're going to shoot up to a place here called Guildford. And then we're going to it's Guildford Road, that's Midland. We're going to go to there to Guildford. They're going to follow this road up here and then along here, and once we hit that we then go to Bullsbrook, and then we go around to Mewshay, then we head off to Gingin.
It's a long way.
Hey?
And what's that Gingin?
Well, there's an olive grove there,
Yeah.
and we're going to go through what they call the Swan Valley,
Yep.
which is the wine growing area of around Perth.
Yep.
You know, like you got in South Australia, you got the what's the valley there? What's the
The Barossa Valley.
Barossa Valley? Yeah, it's like that. So we're going to drive through there. So there'll be lots of grapes and things like that along the
Excellent.
way. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So if I leave you with the map, you can sort of follow the route. Okay. Tomorrow I spoke to Colin down at Stella Ridge. He's got a vineyard. He's the Greek fella,
Yeah.
and he said come for lunch. So what we'll do is we'll take off and try and get into Margaret River around about midday, so we can have lunch, and then we'll have a look around there. Then on the way back, we might go through a place called Harvey, where there's an organic olive grove.
Excellent.
And so I've just got to.
So how long have you been following olives?
In any great depth, about 6 years. But I mean, I've always had an interest in olives. Incidentally, there are olive trees here. You notice there are about 50 olive trees along the.
Is it an olive tree?
Yeah, it's loaded with olives. See the olives on it?
Does anyone pick them?
Yeah, people come along and pick them. Yeah.
What sort of olive trees are
There are about 4 different varieties. I'm not sure what they are, but they're. I had a look at them a couple of years ago, just a quick look, but I might have another look at them now.
Yeah.
You know, now that I've 45 years ago.
Really?
You know, somebody decided that it'd be nice to have a string of olives there.
And it was a Greek?
It might have been a Greek on the council that did it. Nobody knows the history. I rang them up and said, you know, who planted them, and they only sort of knew roughly when they were planted. And but they go the full length of that field, and so and down here at the works where they've just been doing the bridge, they've just planted some more olive trees. See them on the way back. There are olives over there. So
why'd they plant those?
oh, look, there's a trend at the moment. It's one of the approved trees for councils, and if I get a chance, I'll take you to. On the way back from my mother-in-law's, I'll take you to a place near South Perth where I'm at, where they've actually put them into a landscaped setting of street trees.
Right.
Yeah, so.
What do you mean it's an approved tree for?
Well, what happens is that we have in WA, and it might be the same in Canberra or not, we have what we call a verge, or a strip between the road and the footpath. We don't usually have the footpath right on the edge of the road, so we call it a verge. Sometimes they call it a burn in some places. And the council plants trees, and those trees are a certain type, and there's a list of about 50 trees you can plant, and olives are on the list. So
why'd they put olives on the list?
they put olives on the list because of the current interest in olives, and also because over here a lot of the new developments are sort of so-called Tuscany type houses, and so to take in the feel of Tuscany, they've actually put in some some olive trees that are just give that ambience of the of Tuscany.
So what do you think of the video?
Great, yeah, it's terrific. I think there's a lot of scope in what you're doing. So. Have you got on to anybody who wants videos done, for a commercial, advertising, or is it, or have you only just, like for instance in South Australia, Viva Olives are pushing their olives a lot, and they've got they've got a video that they show on the TV that cost them, thousands, might have been millions, I don't know, but it costs a lot of money to put them together. I mean, do you do that sort of stuff, or are you mainly more in the documentary news?
Well, that's my background, is that?
Yeah. What we're going to have to do is...
These are not wild olives out
No,
here, is it?
they're reaping glass. Let's take it slowly along here. Now you see the sign, Olive Farm Function Centre? Here?
Yeah.
Just duck down here for a minute. Okay. Now, this is a wild olive, I think. Okay. So this is the old property of. That's a wild olive there. This is the Olive Farm Function Centre, and this is where part of the old olive farm. But you can see there's nothing. Do you want to take that? This would have been a seedling from some of those original trees. So I mean, this seedling, because there are scattered around the houses and that, there are a whole lot of seedlings that, I mean, this could be 50 or 60 years old, this seedling here, and then that might have come from another seedling further down. So, but usually with a seedling, you don't get a lot of flesh.
So why do you call it wild one?
Well, because the fruit doesn't really. The fruit just has mainly stone, right? It doesn't. You'd have to graft this to. There's not much flesh in there, so there's not much oil in there. Okay, so that's what that.
So this, you reckon, it's about 20 years old?
I don't know. I reckon this will be about 50 years old.
50.
Yeah. Well, you see, wild seedlings. If you want to get that into shape to actually get some decent olives off it, you have to graft it. See, what happens is every seed on the tree is a different organism, right? So if you took 1,000 seeds and you got those trees, each one would be different. And out of 1,000, you might get one tree that would have a decent olive on it. I mean, that's how it works. Okay, now, but you can still take that tree, take away all that stuff and just leave maybe one or two trunks and graft it, say with a Kalamata or a Koroniki or something, and because it'd have a very good root system, it'd be a very productive tree. So, but here it's good. Probably provides a bit of food for the birds, because a lot of the birds want the seed. They crack the seed and eat the little nut inside. So, I mean, it's even though it's wild, it's doing a little job there. You want to take that?
Yeah, I keep that. It's good. So it's a winery, huh?
Yep. So all these houses here would have been part of the original olive farm. As part of the early settlement of WA. Now, if we just, and in amongst that, a few, as I said, olive seedlings and that, but the olive tree is just down here. It's on the road here. So what we may have to do is park across the road and then walk over.
So it was quite a big farm.
Oh yeah, big farm. And it was right on the river. And in fact, they used to use the river as a means of communication. Now just slow down here. Now there's the tree there. Right? See this big tree here? See this one? Okay, we'll go across the road. We'll park over there. And you can...
Okay,
Right. The tree I think was planted probably between about 1831 and 1835.
Okay, we'll start again and we'll just say this is one of the first olive trees.
Yeah, this is one of the oldest olive trees in Western Australia. The first ones came in 1831, and I think this particular one was planted somewhere between 1831 and 1834. So around about that time, and there would have been several hundred trees like this, and it was part of the olive grove farm. The trees, yes.
Can I just stick once more because the car came past?
Okay.
So and rolling.
Right. The first olive trees came to Western Australia. Okay. The first olive trees.
Okay.
The first olive trees came to Western Australia in.
I hesitated. So this is one of the first.
This is one of the first olive trees that were planted in Western Australia. The first ones came in about 1831. This was planted between about 1831 and 1834. It would have been one of several hundred olive trees brought into the colony as a means of getting oil for use in lamps and cooking, and possibly used as a medicine. The olives themselves that came out, Mangles brought out possibly four different types of olives. There would have been some Spanish and maybe some French olives in amongst them. For us to really know what this olive is, we'd have to do some DNA testing, and that's on our list of things to do. But at this stage, we haven't done that. So, but we have examined the olive itself, had a quick look at it, and soon we may look at doing some tests on the amount of oil in that olive. It's going to be very easy to harvest because it's on the main street, and we can just collect it without too much problem. The reasons why.
So you reckon this is a Kolaniki?
I doubt if it's a Koroniki. It might be a pick whale or something like that. But
Pink whale.
Pick whale. It might be a Spanish olive, but I'm not sure. It is a small olive, and small olives are generally oil olives. Now, the problem with the tree here is that it has a lot of suckers around it, and it's very big. And so what happens is that you actually get a lot of olives that are small. If the tree was trained properly, then there'd be fewer olives, and they would be larger. But they probably wouldn't go more than twice as big as that particular olive. So, but most oil olives tend to be of a small size, and most olives that we eat, the table olives, tend to be larger olives.
These are the suckers, are they?
They're the suckers down here.
How do they come up?
Well, the olive tree has the ability of sending up what we call adventitious shoots, and these when a tree isn't looked after, then these shoots come out of down near the roots. So a lot of trees do that, but the olive has a particular propensity. But you'll notice that the leaf is quite different. You'll notice that the leaf, if you compare the two leaves, the sucker is in what we call a juvenile form, whereas the leaf here is the mature form, and suckers can turn into mature trees, but the olives are going to be a variable quality. So, but these may retain their juvenility for a very long time, and of course, I mean, they do draw off nutrients that the main tree requires. You just stand there, I'll estimate how tall the tree is if you like. Right. This is one of the first olive trees planted in Western Australia. It would have been from the...
okay, we'll get you to do it again. You kept
Yeah.
looking there too long. You actually got to engage the
okay,
camera.
okay.
Okay? And roll it.
That's one of the first olive trees that was planted in Western Australia. It came from the original stock of trees brought in about 1831. My estimation is that this tree was planted somewhere between about 1831 and 1834, and it was actually part of a much larger grove of about several hundred olive trees. The property itself is on the river, and the farm, olive farm, would have had a number of other crops as well, but the olive was put in there as a possible source of oil, which was a valuable commodity in the very early days. But because of other factors like increased animal production, whaling, better links with South Africa and India, the necessity for the olive for oil actually declined. There was a group of people in Guildford, which is this particular area, that showed some interest in the olive, and the agricultural group in the Guildford area was heavily promoting the olive to the point where there was a farmer called Abraham Jones who lived in the area, and he actually produced a very simple device for actually making olive oil. And basically this was just a piece of wood that was very highly polished, and he'd crush the olives and put the olives up at one end, and the water would drain off, then the olive oil would come off, and he would collect the olive oil. And so he was saying to people, look, you know, you've got to plant olives, it's a great crop to have, and we can make oil. But his efforts were really, you know, at the end of the day, it didn't produce an olive industry in Western Australia. And it's really taken now, in 2001, to get anything like you know, the start of a major olive industry.
And rolling.
Yeah, well, this is one of the first trees in Western Australia. It was planted from the original stock of trees that came into the state back in about 1831. My estimations are that it was planted between about 1831 and 1834, and it was really part of a larger... This is a major road.
And an airport.
Right. Well, this tree here is one of the original trees planted in Western Australia. It was part of the original stock that came into Western Australia in 1831, and I estimate that this tree was planted between 1831 and 1834. It was part of an olive grove in Olive Farm, which I think would have had about 300 or 400 olive trees. The purpose of the olive trees in those days was to actually produce olives to make olive oil, and olive oil would have been used for lighting, for heating, as a medicine. And you know, by the time the olives would have produced their fruit, other oils were available, like whale oil, even emu oil. And the communication between South Africa and India and Western Australia had improved, so oils were coming in from other places, and so the need for olive oil declined. And it's only now, some 170, 180 years later, in 2001, we're seeing the start of a major olive industry in Western Australia.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay, off. That's it.
That's
Good.
it? The end of it?
No, not the end of you.
Hey?
This is not the end of you.
No, so begin to me. We going?
Yeah.
That links into the Swan River.
Is that tunnel on the right or left?
It's on the left on the corner. So what we can do here now some of these places are pretty old. Not so much here, but as we get further around. Now this is the hotel here. Okay. There's an old hotel here. The Guildford Hotel. Do you want to stop and do anything here?
Only if it's important.
Well, the fellow Jones had this hotel, and he was one of the original olive growers. And it's a very old colonial, from the early colonies.
It's beautiful.
One of the early...
Once again, not yet now.
Okay. Abraham Jones was one of the early farmers who really thought there was a value in growing olives, and he actually tried to convince people to plant more olive trees, and he actually invented this device, which is a highly polished piece of wood that he'd have crushed olives at one end, and the juices had run down the wood. The water would run down first, and then he'd collect the olive oil afterwards. And so it was a simple way of making olive oil. Guildford itself here is, one of the first inland towns of Western Australia, and over here we have a series of some of the original buildings and the original church over here. So Guildford, in fact, was probably one of the first farming areas outside of the settlement when the early settlers came to Perth. The very first settlement was around where the city is now, and then because they had the river coming up here, they had a means of getting materials up and down the river, and so this town of Guildford developed as the first inland town, and so there was quite a lot of farming around this area. And what we're going to do now is we're heading towards what we call the Swan Valley, and this was quite a fertile valley, and some of the early farming occurred in that valley, and now it's become one of the premier wine growing areas of Western Australia. There are other ones like Margaret River and Franklin, but what we have here is the very early history of the state. Now, coming along here, we're going past a seminary, and there are some olive trees here as well that I think they're probably about 80 or 90 years old, and I have a string of cars behind me. Oh, I can't stop. So this is a Catholic seminary. Now, at the moment we're going to cross the Swan River, and so this formed the communication between Perth and this region. The river itself is not a freshwater river, so you couldn't really use the water for drinking purposes. It's actually a salt river because its source is up in some salt lakes. The river actually has become more saltier because of the clearing of the land and degradation of the landscape that has occurred, with some of the farming activities. Now, what we're doing now is we're proceeding through an area. This is Lavender Hill Park, where they have some cricket, test cricket here. The early stages of test series are played here in a more informal area, and that's the sort of start of the Swan Valley. Now, if on our left-hand side we start to see the beginning of the vineyards. Now, these vineyards are both for table grapes as well as for making wine. Now, as I said before, it's a fertile valley, and we go for several kilometres now where there are numerous vineyards. Now, a lot of the vineyards along here were established by Italians and Yugoslavs, but one of the notable things is you don't see a lot of olive trees that you might expect, but they do have olive trees, and they would have had the money just for themselves. But the land here is probably too valuable now to create olive groves, and there is pressure in this area to convert the area into housing, but there is resistance. We're going past an area here where there was a vineyard that's been left derelict, but people are putting in new vines as well, and I think it will retain the character of the vineyard type, just like we have in the Hunter Valley and also in South Australia, where we have a number of different vineyard areas. Well, on the right-hand side. I don't have a lot of interest in grapes as a crop. It's not my. I mean, I could work with grapes, but my interests are in oils, and olive oil is an edible oil, which obviously that I have a cultural affinity towards, and also it's we're at that stage of developing an industry, so it's very exciting to be part of a new industry, in Australia. But I've worked on what we call essential oils, oils that are used in perfumes, eucalyptus oil, tea tree oil, lavender oil, and edible oils. Now there's an olive tree. Now that would have been there from a fairly, that looks like a bit of a runaway. So you do find them. Now if we stop and have a look at those, we'll see the olives are a little bit bigger. Oh, he's got a number of little olive trees here. Yeah, and you can see they produce a decent crop, don't they? Now I think these are what they call a Verdale. This is a French, and you can see it's got quite a lot of flesh in it. Now this is a table olive. Okay. Now they're just about ready to pick for the green pickling process. Now, if you want to actually process olives, there are many ways of doing it, but I found the simplest way is just to take the olive and just wash them. It's best to pick them by hand. If you pick them by rakes and things, they damage the olives. So what I would do with these, I just wash them and make up a solution of salt, a 10% solution, and that's just like taking a plastic bucket, and just like you have at home, and you put in a kilo of salt. Just buy it in the shop. You can use rock salt or anything else, and just put the olives in there and come back in 3 or 4 months' time, and the olives should be less bitter. And after that, you just make up some more brine, add a bit of vinegar and some olive oil, and you've got the Greek-style green olives. So a very, very simple process. Now some people, they crack them and they slit them and everything else, and that just speeds up the process. If you want to eat the olives faster, then you need to break up the olive a little bit so that the salt penetrates into the olive. So as I said, these are a larger olive, and I think these look to me like what we call a Verdale. Now, unless I did some DNA testing and did some measurements, I can't tell exactly. And also the colour, they will go black, and so the colour itself would tell me a little bit more about the olive. So you can see it's very prolific, and so one tree like this would provide, with this amount of olives on it, would provide a family, olives for a whole year. But if somebody had a small property, or even in the back garden had half a dozen olive trees, it's feasible you could actually have your own olive oil, and and so for part of the year be eating your own olive oil. And if you're an Italian and you're making your own olive oil, you say olio mio, which means my olive oil. Okay, so in terms of the Greeks, I don't think they've got a saying for that. The Italians have.
Okay, can you tell me?
Okay.
Rolling.
Rolling. Well, the interesting thing is that grapes and olives have been growing together for thousands of years. In fact, probably about 6,000 years. And in the Mediterranean, where both of the crops have come from, you find olive trees side by side with the grapes. Now, generally speaking, in those countries, say Greece, Italy, in Turkey, the olive trees may be grown on the slopes, and the grapes are grown more on the flat areas. The climatic conditions are similar for both species, but the interesting thing is the olive is an evergreen, right? It always retains its leaves, whereas the grape is a deciduous tree, and in places like Australia, the olive tree keeps growing throughout the whole year, whereas the grape generally goes to sleep during the winter time. Now, if it gets very cold, the olive also goes into a period where the activity of the tree is low. But an interesting thing about the olive is that it needs a cold snap to produce the fruit. Now, if you were to grow these olives, say in the tropical areas of Australia, the trees grow beautifully, beautiful green trees, but they don't produce any olives. You could take the same tree, make cuttings off that tree, take it down into cooler areas like what we call southern Australia, which is like the bottom of Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, parts of New South Wales, and there are some parts in Queensland. If you produce the same, made a cutting, and you produced a tree, you would produce olives. So it's purely a climatic factor. You need a chill, and you need the temperature in July in Australia to be between an average temperature between about 10 and 12 degrees centigrade, and that gives you the chill. Now, there are olives that require more chill and some require less chill. Now, if you take the Greek olives, like Kalamata and Koroniki, they require only a small amount of chill, what we call a few hundred hours. Some of the Spanish olives, like Sevillano, they require anything from about 1,000 to 1,200 hours to actually provide that chill factor. So there is a variation. So some olives are better suited to cooler climates and some are better suited to warmer climates. And I think in Western Australia, South Australia, and in Southern Australia, we should be looking at, particularly in these warmer regions like today, we believe it's going to be about 40 degrees. The winter's going to be quite mild. Then we should be going for varieties that are coming from, say, Northern Africa. Maybe the sort of varieties are in Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, Libya, Turkey, southern Greece like Crete, Italy like Sicily and Calabria, because I think those sorts of olives are better suited for these warmer climates. Now, when you go further south, say in Western Australia, in Victoria, where it gets cooler, then it may be better to put in more the Tuscany type olives, because in Tuscany the climate is cooler. And so olives, say in Tasmania, you'd be going more for the Tuscany olives, which would be like Frantoio, Lucchino, Pendolino, and so forth, because they are better suited to that climate. Well, both the...
Can you come into the shop?
Sure.
See what the camera is?
The other interesting thing is that... in here, is it?
Yep.
The other interesting thing is that the olive is not native to Australia. The olive was brought into Australia back in the early days when the early settlers came into the colonies in New South Wales, and then I think the next lot of olives came to Western Australia, and then that was about 1831. Then after that, olives came to Victoria, South Australia, and other states. Now, both the olive tree and the eucalypt, or the gum tree that you see behind this olive tree, have some similar characteristics in that they are able to tolerate very hot conditions. And I think what happens is that because they can tolerate the conditions, the olive fits in the same sort of botanical position in terms of growing as the eucalypt. So wherever eucalypts grow, because a lot of eucalypts are growing in areas where they use limited amount of water, they only need a certain amount of water to survive. The olive is similar, and it's only recently, like in the last 50 years, that olive groves have been irrigated. In the past, around the Mediterranean, olive groves were given some water, but to have highly technical irrigation systems is something very new in the olive. And there is a question whether it is good to actually irrigate olives. If you irrigate the olives, then the olive seems to produce an oil which has weaker flavours, because when the olive is stressed, that actually brings out some of the better flavours in the olive oil, particularly the pungency and the fruitiness and the pepperiness of the olive oil. So again, here we see where the two species, though totally unrelated, they wouldn't have known each other 150, 200 years ago. Here we have an olive tree growing side by side by, with a eucalypt, and they are sharing the same soil, they're sharing the same climatic conditions, and even both of these trees are so close to each other. From my estimation here, both are very healthy trees, and you can see, the healthy production of olives on this tree. Now, if the tree was going to be suffering, the olives would be small, they'd be fewer, there'd be more disease in the tree. But here we have, even though the tree is not a commercial tree, obviously it's not being pruned, it's still a very healthy tree. Now, the interesting thing is, this tree should be here in 1,000 or 2,000 years' time. And if it is, it'll still be producing olives. And that's the whole thing about the olive tree compared to other fruit trees. If you don't do anything to the olive tree, they still keep producing olives over hundreds and hundreds of years. And the oldest olive trees are believed to be in Jerusalem, and some of those trees there are believed to be over 2,000 years old. I've personally seen olive trees in Greece. They're over 1,000 years old, and so there are many examples of long-lived olive trees.
Would these two trees be sharing the same roots, same space?
Yes, they would be drawing resources from the same area. Their root system, if one were to dig under there, we'd see an overlapping of their roots. This area here, in particular, is a valley, so I'd imagine there's plenty of moisture in the ground, and being a valley of the river, which might have flooded over, its history, I would say this is quite a fertile soil. Given another situation where the soil is not so good, maybe the trees wouldn't be doing so well.
And who would win?
I think at the end of the day, I would put my money on the olive tree.
Why is that?
Because I think that eucalypts are prone to, if there are storms and the trees topple over, there are fires, but both trees are capable of regenerating. That's the amazing thing. I mean, if there was a fire through here, all this would all burn and everything else, and you would see new suckers coming out, both out of the olive tree and the eucalypt tree. So they are survivors, but I think I'm a bit biased.
Well done. Just dominates, doesn't it?
Hey? What's that? The
Eucalypt.
Yeah, the other thing is you need light to produce olives, so obviously, it's a sort of a natural, in a natural way. So it's. And look at the crop on the tree. See how it's all open?
Yeah.
That's the best way to have an olive tree. So that you don't, that other tree we saw was a great big tree, lots of leaves, but here you have plenty of light and plenty of air coming through the tree. So that's what you want with an olive tree. And in a commercial setting, when olive trees are pruned, you want to prune them in a way that the light is able to get inside the tree, so you're actually getting olives inside the tree. Whereas normally the olives will just grow on the outside of the tree. So if this is very heavily foliaged, then the olives would only be here. But here you're getting plenty of light, so you're getting olives inside the tree. And so, you know, that's very important.
What do they use the eucalypt for? Anything?
Well, they reckon they're planting some for eucalyptus oil.
So why do you do this? Why do you take photos?
Oh, I just take photos, put them in a file. Never know. Never know when I need to come back.
You got many photos?
Thousands. Oh no, what I do is wherever I go, I keep some photos because you know, sometimes I might need to compare something, and I remember these are here, and I think I'll pull out the photos, and sometimes I might come back and see if the tree's changed. You know, just to if they're young trees, you get, you know, photos that are different, you know, different sizes and things. So. About 5 or 6 projects being established in this area, and the sort of size of the project is about 500 hectares per project. Some are more.
And who are doing these projects?
These projects tend to be what we call investment projects on a prospectus, which means a group of people get together, they do a feasibility study. If that works, they then establish their prospectus and they sell parts of the property as part of the prospectus, and then they start to develop the property. Now in some cases they might actually plant 100 hectares at the beginning, and then when the prospectus goes out there are actually trees in the ground, just sort of, so people who are buying the share in the property would actually get to see what it's like. You know, people want to see olive trees in the ground. Now these are tax-driven projects, so a person who invests will buy a component in the project, and then there are procedures where they can actually tax deduct from that investment, and then but as the project goes, a project, to get to the point where it's actually making money from the project, takes about 10 to 12 years as the project goes. But of course, if you are part of the investment programs, then you have the ability of using the tax-driven component to be able to reduce taxes like income tax. This first one we're coming to is called Curtin olives, and this is actually was established by from here, as I said, there are about half a dozen projects being developed in the area, and his project is about 500 hectares. I think he's got about 200 or 300 hectares planted already, has a number of different varieties, and the one further along, they've planted 500 hectares, and they're actually going into the next 500 hectares. So there is a lot of interest in people wanting to invest in these olive projects. One further out has actually been floated on the stock exchange, so people who want to invest in that particular project basically have to be shareholders through the stock exchange. So that's just a different way of doing it. And one of the projects in here, I think, will be like a private family company, and so it'll be a group of people who get together and set up an olive grove, and then they will have a sort of a private company, and then they'll distribute their olives and olive oil.
Can we get your indicator for a sec? So these people love it? They're doing
Oh,
it
yeah.
for money, or are they doing it for striving?
The money is obviously very important, but olive is one of those things that just captures people, and after a while the money seems to drift into the background. But there is something magic about the olive that is attracting people, and we'll see probably in a few years' time how successful all these projects are going to be. And so, but personally, I think in Australia at the moment we've got a great opportunity to get into the international olive oil industry. There is a lot of interest. I know for a fact that there are companies from Germany who've invested in Australia for olives, companies from Italy have invested, and so and some of these groves out here, the olive oil is going to be purchased by some Italian olive oil companies to be marketed internationally. So I think we're at a great point at the moment. We're at the cusp of a major olive industry. So it is pretty exciting, but there's a lot of hard work to do, and I don't think everybody's going to make it. I think there are going to be some winners and losers. And so, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to have a great industry in Australia with the olive.
These big people are going to make it?
Collectively around Australia, there are about 25 of these projects, and I think some will make it and some won't. And I know, for instance, in this area, people have started a project, but they haven't managed to get enough interest in their prospectus, and they haven't made it. So some will make it and some won't.
Guy here?
Yep.
You reckon he's going to do it?
Yep. He's got a chance. He's got olives in the ground, so he's keen. So I mean, I hope that everybody makes it. I mean, I don't want to see anybody go in and have a look. I haven't checked with him, but I'll tell him that we've been.
What's his background?
He's in the demolition business. There, see all the olive trees? You want to see olive trees?
So there's going to be a very common sight, huh?
Yep, this area is going to be one of the major olive areas. I've got to pull over because there's a bloke behind me. There you are, olive trees. As I said, he's got a couple of 100 hectares planted there. Now we'll go to his pump.
So these are Western Australian olive trees, huh?
No, there are some from Western Australia and some from interstate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's not much room for tractors or anything there, is there?
Oh yeah, there is. Now, where is his pump?
Well, it doesn't seem to allow much room between the trees. Very close
Yes,
together.
no, well what happens is that there is a technology where you plant the trees, and then the idea is you pull one out in about 10 years' time. There we are.
For what reason?
Well, then, as the trees grow, as the trees get bigger, so in other words, you get an early crop. You see, the trees are going to be relatively small for the first 7 to 10 years. So each tree is producing olives. So he's going to have more olives per hectare by having these trees there. Then what he'll do is gradually he'll take the trees out and maybe replant them somewhere else, because you can replant the trees, and I'll take you to some trees that have been replanted recently. Okay, so back in South Perth. So anyway, his method is he's planting what we call a higher density, probably about 400 trees to the hectare, whereas if you're going to start off with the spacing, the final spacing, you put in about 250 trees a hectare. So shall we get out and have a look?
Yeah. This is a healthy tree?
This is Kalamata.
Really?
Hey? This is Kalamata. Beautiful.
Can you tell?
Oh, look. Look at the colour. Hey? Look at the leaves. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So how many trees has he got here?
Well, if he's got 200 hectares, he'd have about 80,000 trees.
80,000.
Yeah. You brought them up here and rebuilt them, got them for nothing virtually. The sort of wood weatherboard, look like, well, they don't look brand new, and once these trees grow, it'll be all part of the environment,
Does he live here at all?
No, but over there, that way, there's a house over in that direction, an old house. I think he's going to live in one of these places up here. You want to walk through?
I'll just get another
Pushing over?
Yeah.
But once they thicken up, they'll find their own point. This is an easterly blowing today, and then the coast is down there, so it'll be a westerly blowing here, so it gets the wind from both directions.
They're all very sort of this way though, aren't they?
They are. That's today. That's only because the wind's blowing them that way.
What's great about it?
Well, it's nice.
Come a bit
to
closer
see.
to me. This way here, back here.
Why is it a nice project?
Yeah, tell me right in front of the lens here,
It's a great project because we're going to have a wonderful industry. I think this is the ideal place for growing olives, Western Australia.
Why is it ideal?
Well, it's got a climate which is like the Mediterranean. We're close to the sea. It's nice dry climate in the winter. I think that the best olive growing areas are going to be ones where you have a nice dry, sorry, I made a mistake there.
Yeah, that's okay. There you go.
The dry winter, forget that, it's a dry summer. This is a great place because you get a good rainfall in the winter, and you get a nice long dry summer, which keeps the trees healthy, allows the olives to ripen, and I'm sure we're going to get olive oil which will be as good as anywhere. As good as it gets. That's what I reckon it'll be.
We'll see. There's wind.
This tree is very healthy, and one way of looking at a tree is to look at how healthy the trunk is. And you've got a nice, beautiful, smooth trunk here. It's not cracked, there's no disease. The tree itself is being irrigated by drip irrigation, and this allows the water to penetrate around the root region. As the tree gets bigger, this will be moved, and maybe a second one put in to allow the irrigation to be more equally distributed. major highway, and I can imagine in time there are going to be people coming here, there'll be tourist buses coming here, there'll be people buying olive oil. You know, it's just a great place to have something so close to a major road. You know, from a marketing point of view, it's perfect. From a growing point of view, you've got nice sloping, just gently sloping land, good drainage, and the vista you get from down here and up there is just going to be magnificent. Underground water.
More water.
Yeah, and that's the pumping station. And up the top end, he's got a pump house that you know, distributes the water around.
Has he got many employees?
Look, I don't know, but an olive grove of this size would need two sorts of employees. There'd be the permanent ones, which would be more sort of management and maybe some maintenance, and then there'd be others that would come in to do pruning, olive picking, so the more casual sort of employees. So I'd imagine a grove of this size, you're probably looking at between, say, 4 and 10 people on a more regular basis, and then, as you know, at certain times of the year you'd require more people for doing the other activities. One of their biggest expenses is going to be pruning and harvesting, and so and these the harvesting methods at the moment can be categorized as manual or mechanical. Manual means not manual the photographer, but manual picking the olives off by hand, and in terms of mechanical harvesting, this can be done by shaking the trees or by having a overhead harvester that comes over the trees. Now, both of these methods have been being used, but I still believe that a lot of the technology is still in an experimental stage. And it could very well be that in the future, depending upon how you grow the olive trees, it could be 2 or 3 different ways the olives are harvested. I don't think there'll be just one way. There's some going up in sort of north of New South Wales, and also at Port, sort of south. Capital of WA. I wouldn't say it's the olive capital of Australia, because a couple of people already said they are the olive town of Australia. I mean,
who are they?
I don't know, somewhere in Queensland, some mob there.
Well, there not too many olive trees here for the olive capital.
Not too many?
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah.
What are all those up there?
Yeah, but here.
Oh, well, here they're not. No. No, but this is the main centre. can grow olives without irrigation, and there you plant them about 150 tree to the hectare. And so I think some people will do that. They'll buy small properties and put in their olives and just rely upon the rain. You know, 80% of the olives in the world are not irrigated, so the technology for growing olives internationally is mainly unirrigated olives. So that's the thing about the olive. Once it's established, you don't need irrigation, but what happens is the yield falls, but the quality of the oil can be better. So it's all a balance.
So it's in the flavour.
To the flavour, and I think that's going to be an important factor in the future. One thing is to produce the olive oil, next thing is to have a good quality olive oil, you know, but more than it meets the minimum standards. That's what I mean. Something that people say, yeah, this is a great olive oil.
So this is the town here, is it?
Well, we haven't quite got there yet. It's not quite there yet.
It's sort of a little bit higher up too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a river down here. Get ready for the festival already. It's a pretty little town.
I reckon this is going to be the olive capital of Western Australia.
Well, they're trying to. The festival's been put in here trying to, you know, beef up the activities. It's only a very small town, and it'll service this these olive industry. So, probably a bit of industry will come here.
It's certainly not a dead town, is it?
No. Okay, we're going to go down here about a K. Well, a lot of people come here and retire as well. You know, it's sort of close to Perth. It looks like a bit of a new subdivision there.
They retire in the country rather than
Yeah.
in the sea.
Yeah. Some people like that. Here's a few, is that, I don't think they're vineyards, those. I think they might be, are they grapes? They look green as grapes, don't they? Yeah, no, this is the olive grove, that's their house. They're growing passion fruit here. They're the olive trees. Some olive trees anyway. How do we get in? How do we get in? I think we got past it. It must have missed their gate. Must have missed their gate. We'll have to go back.